You are listening to the Ready PDM Network.
Are you ready?
Hello, Ready Product Radio heads. Welcome to another exciting episode of Ready Product Radio. This week, we welcome back Paul Lewis, CTO of Hitachi Data Systems Canada, and Paul is talking to us about data as a product. Today's episode was brought to you by Eigenworks. Most companies don't know why they lose deals, and few know why they win. Eigenworks can tell you why. With the buyer as hero approach, Eigenworks gets deep insight into the reasons organizations make buying decisions. The product, promotion, and sales insights provide Eigenworks clients with a significant competitive position in their marketplaces.
Are you ready?
Paul Lewis, welcome back.
Happy to be here.
Excellent. I believe we spoke at episode 0, which was about 6 or 7 months ago. Thanks for coming back. Different set of topics this time, but before we jump in, for folks who didn't listen to that episode, or maybe need some reminding about who Paul Lewis is, maybe you can start again with an introduction of yourself, what you do here at HDS.
Sure. So I am the Chief Technology Officer for Hitachi Canada.
Excellent.
I also dabble in analytics for the Americas, and I do a lot of evangelism, a lot of blogging and speaking on behalf of IT strategy and CIO advisory, and so on and so forth.
Excellent. And that keeps you on the plane a lot of the time, you were just saying.
I do travel a good portion of my time.
Excellent.
But I enjoy it. It's all in good fun, as long as I'm seeing clients. That's what's important to me.
Good stuff. So, Paul, this time, the 3 topics that I thought we'd cover is data as a product. That's a cool one. I'd like to get your viewpoint there. Second, the real definition of data mobility. That's a hot topic right now. And then if we've got time left over, maybe we'll check in on digital transformation. Are we there yet? What's left to be done, etc. Those sound good? Perfect. Excellent. So let's jump in with data as a product. So what is your perspective on data as a product?
So data, up to this point, and we've been sort of building software for the vast majority of careers, has always been sort of the side effect of an application. Right? It's the thing that I architect with the application. In fact, if you do it properly, you're sort of architecting at the same time. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, when you do that, they are tied together. They're one and the same. And the reality is data is the asset of the organization because it lives longer, right? Infrastructure will last 2 to 3 years, applications maybe up to 10 years. Data may, in fact, not have an end life. And in fact, it's the thing that I can actually create new value out of. I can find insight and create new business value out of it. So if you can start to treat data as a product, not only like you treat the applications as a product, maybe that elevation of its importance will create a different level of importance in the organization. So things like, we tend to call databases Tor_DB9, while we call the applications Merlin. But imagine if you called the data Thor, right? And you versioned it the same way that applications are versioned. So now it's sort of elevated as just as important. If you abstract the data from the application that created, all of a sudden has a life of its own, right? So a client in a mortgage application, it will only be a mortgage application client. But if you separate it out, it can now be a client for anything else your organization wants to be able to do. You can create insight outside of the application that created. So thinking of it as a product where you can version it, where you can have features added to it, where you can create business revenue and expense off of it is sort of a different idea of it being the side effect, the thing that you save and secure and
Yeah, exactly. And of interest only to the IT guys and the DBAs. So is this something that people are doing, or is this a new view that people are taking? Like, are there examples of companies that are taking this approach, or is it something fairly new?
I think you're finding the creation of the chief data officer as that goal, right? Because they're seeing data as an asset that they want to create insight from. Well, the only way to do that is to create an organization that in many ways is a peer to the VP of application and the VP of infrastructure in order to create that value. So why don't I house everything that's data under that person that's equivalent to the VP of application? So why not put storage, stewardship, MIS, analytics, backup as all part of this person? And I'm seeing that as a general trend because they want to treat it as an asset and therefore create an organization to support that.
Yeah.
Now, it might be an IT role, but you'll see data governance and and data stewardship across line of business in IT.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's interesting you say that, because I was recently spent some time with an organization who did exactly what you're just saying. They had a VP of IT. That VP of IT left, and then rather than bringing back just another VP of IT, they instead created this role of Vice President of Data Management, because it was exactly what you were saying. They basically wanted to elevate the topic of, let's look at our data as an asset. So when you're doing that, then does the chief data officer then have multiple internal customers? It could be different business divisions, could be marketing. Are these some of the things that opens up as well? Is that then presumably internal customers like marketing can come and say, okay, what data do we have on XYZ, and maybe start to package that up as the foundation of a new offering, instead of, like you say, starting with let's write a cool Facebook app.
I think the BI team has internal customers. I think a data team with a chief data officer or vice president of data actually becomes a line of business, right? Because they treat themselves as an ability to create new value and new revenue for the company. Right. So now they have a business model canvas, right? And that canvas says, how do I earn money? What are my channels? Who are my customers? What are their segments? What are my value proposition? What are my expenses? How do I create the P&L of this division, which is not unlike the other 5 line of businesses that this organization has?
Yeah.
So it will still have BI because it still delivers operational value. But you're going to re-articulate that operational value in terms of top line and margins to the business.
And do you think part of it as well, Paul, is it also creates the opportunity, again, assuming there's a whole layer of data governance there, because I know you and I have a lot of background in financial services and regulations up the wazoo, but is there then an opportunity to shop your data, again, if it's legal and if you've got the permission, with partners and packaging up offerings with partners, maybe even making it available externally to customers themselves, externally to other companies? Do you see much of that going on?
I would say less so the raw data,
right?
And I would say more so, 4 big use cases of data. So you've got the descriptive use case where I'm looking sort of MIS world, looking back to see how can I create an operational value. Maybe it's a weekly report to do work in the operations. Then there's diagnostics where I want to solve a problem, right? I found a problem, I want to solve the problem. Let me double click on the root cause. Predictive, where I can use the data of what's happened and add data that's maybe coming externally to determine what might happen in the future. And that's a very different discipline where I'm looking much more about creating models to determine what might happen in the future, and especially the external data support that. And then prescriptive, which is how can I take the information that I have that might also be predictive and actually perform an action. Maybe flip the switch and turn the dial, automated or manual, but that actually does work. That actually creates a business decision. And I think those are where the new values are going to come from. Less about selling raw data, more about the insights derived from those 4 quadrants.
Yeah, and how you use it internally. And do you see any angle here as well? I see a lot of activity, let's say in the startup space, even here in Toronto, around the combination of machine learning and data. And I think the whole app ecosystem on mobile has kind of gotten people thinking a lot about that. Do you see a lot of that as well? That there'll be a machine learning aspect to either leveraging the data that's already there, or maybe even feeding the data, or
certainly the algorithms of big data, which includes sort of the machine learning data, helps create a different level of insight than just double clicking on a dead warehouse, right? There is interesting value you can gain just by compiling data together, but there's more insight to be gained once you're providing some more economic or algorithmic type implementations to support that.
Yeah, good. So what's a safe, tangible example that you can think of that we could talk about with this? Obviously, not giving away any secret sauce of your customers. Like, I think everybody's aware of what Google's doing, and people have different perspectives. My wife is freaked out by the fact that Google knows exactly when she needs to leave for an appointment. I enjoy the convenience, but are there some safe examples that you can discuss in terms of how people are starting to leverage that more as an asset, like you say, rather than a...
Certainly, Insight provides a lot of value when it comes to customer experience.
Okay.
Right. So if I look at financial services, the customer experience there is less about transactional, whether they buy a product from you, and more about appreciating life events for a consumer.
Mm-hmm.
So to be able to predict, let's say, that they're going to need a car loan because they're at the age that they might buy a car, or that their children at the age that they're going to go to university, and predict that they might need student loans to support that, and create that holistic understanding of the family versus the individual, and just selling them an individual product. To know and see that their financial needs change over time, and you can do that with analytics versus having a financial planner sort of watching the activities, or simply waiting for a consumer to come to you and ask for a product.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we've both been in the financial services space a long time. We've been talking about that a long time with CRM, but I think what you're saying now is it was really tough previously because the data was often siloed in different operational systems. So I know myself, for example, I spent 5 years doing CRM solution at IBM, and then you go out into the wild, so to speak, and you're like, you're dealing with, let's say, a Rogers Mobile or something, and you're like, where's your insight into me as a customer? So is it that what's happening? Maybe now that the technology is catching up to kind of the CRM vision that we had in the 1990s, and the data's been de-siloed, so to speak?
I think it sort of segues into digital transformation as a whole.
Okay.
Right? Because I believe that sort of the disruptors that are happening in many industries are affecting how CEOs are perceiving the value that they provide to the industry.
Okay.
Right? So disruptors, whether it be companies like the Ubers or the Airbnbs that are affecting the hotel and taxi industry, or just simple moving automation, creating less task workers and more information workers, or just simple consumerization, where there's an expectation that I consume enterprise goods like I consume consumer goods. Right? Those new disruptors are having CEOs look at their business and say, growth's important to me, and I have to evolve the organization as I try to hockey stick my revenue. So digital transformation equals really three big things. It's how do I look at my operational efficiency? And that's not cost savings. That's more time to market, right?
Yeah.
How do I make sure that the logistics of producing toys is faster from design to shelf than it ever was before? That's the first one. Second one's customer experience. It's creating a whole life experience, or our new way of looking at customer centricity, not just in terms of 360-degree view, but their perspective of how they transact with me. And then finally, new revenue growth. How do I take the transactions I already have, those revenue streams, and create new value for the revenue I'm asking for it, right? And those are creating, something like a chief digital officer that's exists for the purpose of that transformation. So customer experience being that example. So if I were to take airports as a customer experience, well, they have spent time in their mobile experience where you can, I can open up an airport's mobile app and see where their stores are and probably find my way to that store. The new experience is drive up to the curb in my taxi, open up the door. They recognize that I'm here. They recognize that I'm loyal to a variety of airlines. They tell me which security line to go into because I'm a priority person. They recommend to me that I pre-order my latte because that's what I usually do. They don't send me to the gate, but they send me to a central place and call me to the gate when my plane's actually ready to board. That's a very different customer experience than just having a mobile app, right? In the retail world, it's less about omni-channel and more about how the consumer experiences the transaction. So omni-channel says, I can buy this piece of clothing online or in the store or in a third party. New customer experience says, this customer is likely going to browse online. They're likely to pick 2 or 3 products that they really want to try on. They're going to go to the store, try on these products, and then potentially buy them there or not or buy them and bring them home, or go online from the store and have them shipped.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a variety of experience there that the retail chain needs to embrace.
And if I can just unpack that last one there, because that's interesting. They're gaining those insights presumably through past behavior that they have either of me or of me as part of a segment or a tranche that they've created. Is that the idea?
In a 360-degree view, right? So you can see that this person probably browsed online and eventually went to a store because they're a loyal member, right? They're a loyalty person, so they know exactly what they purchased.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're seeing merchants not only describe back to head office the transaction, so they bought this product for this price, but actually the customer experience they're collecting. That this person came in, they tried on these 5 things, they bought this one thing. Well, that's valuable data that manually you aren't collecting, but systematically you can.
So let me kind of test you on the potential dark side of that. And let's stick with or let's go back to the financial services for a second. So I remember I'm old enough and been through enough with financial services to remember where the branches were getting too expensive as an outlet. So contact centers were created. The business case that those financial institution VPs floated was, the cost to serve is much less in the contact center, and trust us, we're going to move our customers from the branch to the contact center. They then went through that yet again when the online channel became available and said, okay, contact centers are pretty expensive relative to online, so let us invest in this online channel, and we'll move our customers. In other words, the financial institutions had the view that they could manage, let's say, their top tier customers, move them up to the branch, and their bottom tier customers slowly move them, down to ultimately online if that's the cheapest or mobile. Do you see that or happening, or do you see it more being about some egalitarian view of the customer, and they're all deserving of the best experience that we can provide them? If you understand what I'm saying, is there a dark side where we're herding all of our low profit customers into online and mobile and keeping them there through some mechanisms, and then at the same time bumping our high value customers from the contact center to say, let me set you up in the branch so that we can have a broader discussion?
I think what they're finding is generation differences come to play, and digital disruptors are coming to play. So at any age, you use Uber. At any age, you're using Airbnb. At any age, you're seeing that information work is becoming more relevant. That you're using your mobile phone more than you're using your laptop. You're consuming from your mobile phone far more than your television. And because of those disruptors and the generation, the expectation of, let's say, millennials, that those lines of moving sort of the richer up to different channels or segmenting your clients by channel is kind of going away. The experience request is now richness across channels, that they should be able to transact with you with a single product or multiple products any way they feel is important to them, and that it's temporary. Remember, the new decision now is, I'm going to buy something from you, and if I don't like it, I'm literally going to drop it, and I'm going to buy that same thing from somebody else. It's not a 5-year buy anymore, right? It's a quarter buy. And if I don't like it, if I don't like the app, if I don't like the game, I'm going to delete that game, and I'm going to download another game. It's the temporary nature of sort of the consumerization world, which is leading to the retail world to say, hold on a second, I'm competing with not just you buying from somebody else, but you not buying, or you telling other people that you didn't like this experience or this product. Potentially affecting 6, 7, 100 times more people than you currently affect now who have no social experience. Good. So the net impact of a poor customer experience is far worse than it has been in the past.
And that trumps any older notions of customer segmentation and whatnot. Got it.
And like if you look at bank specific, their org chart of by channel is really defeating the purpose. Right, because you got 3, 4 SVPs of channel, and they're competing for their revenue market share. Well, clients are saying, it's interesting that you think I want to dedicate my time to that channel, but that's not how I want to transact with you. Yeah. I want to start here, get help here, and conclude there. It's my choice because I will go to another bank.
Yeah.
Your interesting credit card / loan / savings account, I will create 5 of the savings account. It doesn't matter to me. It's commodity. Right? And that's not just true of financial services. That's kind of true, just the general consumerization.
Yeah, definitely. So what? Going back to the data as product topic. So what new opportunities, new businesses, new careers do you see coming out of this? I know that a lot, not just the financial institutions, a lot of retail as well, that data squirreled away in, antiquated systems. And then you've been talking a lot about mobile here, and mobile, we've all seen statistics. Mobile is generating data at a much, much faster rate than those old, CICS systems or whatever. So how are you seeing organizations deal with that? Are they going past the idea of a data warehouse and just creating these large, you hear different terms like data lakes and all these things. Like, how are they dealing with rationalizing all that data without falling to the trap, like I say, of the data warehouse, where you've got a 3-year project before you can even give, like you say, a line of business access to that data? Like, what's the new cool there? Yeah.
I'll address the first question, which is sort of the roles that are kind of new.
Good, yeah.
So I work a lot with higher ed, and both on a college and university front. Many new programs are being created specifically called Masters of Business Analytics or Masters of Business Innovation or a curriculum in business intelligence. Every school is creating those new diploma or degree or master's program specifically dedicated to create value with data.
All right.
The net result of that is an enterprise information management program in an organization that is managed by the chief data officer that is created for the purpose of creating new business value. Right? And you're right that the architecture has changed for that world.
Yeah.
Whereas it used to be source databases that are ETL'd into enterprise data warehouse, that might get too big, and you create data marts based on products or geography. You use BI tools to access those data marts. That's all well and good, and that produces 1,000 reports, and you spent $10 million in 10 years perfecting that. Probably not going away because you spent $10 million in 10 years on that. And it probably runs your business. 1,000 people in your business use those daily reports to actually produce value in the operations. Probably not going away. Unfortunately, it doesn't really work in the new innovative world where I have a lot of stream information coming externally, maybe a lot of Twitter feeds. Well, batch-oriented world doesn't work well for real time. I can kind of make it fast. I certainly can't make it real time.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? It doesn't really work well with a lot of variety of data. It's selecting from and inserting to. If I have a whole bunch of documents or video or audio data or machine data, well, I can't really deal with that in an enterprise data warehouse because it doesn't conform to my star schema, right? And the volume is impactful, right? If I want to collect a petabyte of information, very difficult to move a petabyte of information across, batch files. Right?
Exactly.
And while those sort of big V's are a problem with that world, it's quite possible that organization doesn't actually have those problems. They don't have velocity problems or volume problems. They simply might have a brittleness problem. And by that, I mean brittleness to change. So let's say you needed a new report, that needed a new piece of data that only existed in the source. Well, now I have to change the mark, change the warehouse, change all the ETLs and select from, and then regression test the entire 1,000. That's your $1 million 6-month project. Well, that doesn't work if I actually need to make a decision now. Which is why now that there's a parallel sort of IT architecture to support that, which data lake comes into play, right? So instead of ETL, I now have integration tools that say, let me look at 1,000 different possible sources, internally, externally, a variety of different protocols, and let me just store it in my organization. Doesn't matter what the type of file it is, or how big it is. I'm gonna put it into this big pool. I'm gonna worry about attaching business context to it in the future. Then I'm gonna use integration analytics tools to narrow that petabyte into a workable gigabyte tool or analytical database that I can just double click in.
Mm-hmm.
Then I'm going to use a visualization tool instead of a BI tool. I want to see a map of Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to be able to double click on the province. I want to see Twitter feed coming in, and I want to see live result changes.
Mm-hmm.
And most importantly, I want that visualization tool and even the integration to be able to access all of my sources at any one period of time.
Mm-hmm.
If I want that new piece of data, I'm just going to add the client file, that client database, so that I can see in real time the net effect
Mm-hmm.
of that data. So it completely changes the brittleness of that world.
Mm-hmm.
And the best part is sort of above that line architecture isn't 10 years, $10 million. It's much more experimental, right? It's much more open source. It's much more find a problem, solve a problem, not invest millions of dollars and hope you're going to get value.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the dual architecture need to support both of those worlds. The bottom half's not going away. The business runs on the bottom half,
Mm-hmm.
and you can't replace it with the top. It's not going to drive all of those reports in the way they need to drive it, because fundamentally, not unlike a mainframe, that runs the business, right?
Yeah.
It's structured in a way that affects the business.
Yeah.
Where experimentation on the top is about creating insight for potentially new value.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting, and what you're describing there. I see two different large organization plays. You see a lot of traditional organizations. Let's say like Canadian Tire, they're a good one that I've been following lately, right? Where they'll say we've created this internal, digital innovation lab, right? Where they're trying to, create new apps, new ways of engaging with customers. Other companies will do that with partners. So is part of the role of this chief data officer to basically, because you don't want to have even within the organization, imagine you don't have a completely walled garden where, like you say, you need a year-long $100 million project just to get out a report. So as part of that chief data officer's role to maybe put in some governance rules, but also to put in some accessibility to allow other parts of the organization and maybe even external groups to go in there and pull out some of that data for mobile, for point of sale.
Certainly a wise observation. I would say that's one of the bigger concerns of shadow IT, right? The bigger concerns of shadow IT from a CIO perspective is you're going to build software that's not compliant, or you're going to access data that isn't necessarily true because it's not the single point of truth. Yeah. And part of that chief data officer is to create that single point of truth, to ensure that the data you're going to select from the business perspective is in fact accurate, is in fact correct, is in fact the definition of the business entity you think it is, right? If you're looking for a property or a client or a loan or a toy or a design, that is in fact what you select is the truth, not just one of many truths that are happening in the organization. So the stewardship and the governance is in fact that role to make sure. But that's not saying the shadow IT is going away. Shadow IT is still valuable from a consuming IT resources perspective, right? So the CIO has $100 million, which is constantly being, 99, 98, 97. But the new money is going to come from the people who are spending more money. So if 60% of the IT spend is actually out of IT, well, that's where enabling shadow IT actually creates value for the organization. So the CIO's role is less about stopping shadow IT and more enabling shadow IT. Go ahead and write your applications. Go ahead and buy SaaS software. But hey, if you want access data, here's an interesting here's some APIs. Exactly. Here's a place for you to put your application so I can secure it and deploy it. But I'm not going to stop you from coding. I'm going to stop you from accessing the institutional value.
Like if we use a couple examples, and so if a Loblaws or a Cineplex or Foot Locker type company says, listen, we need mobile apps. We don't have the time to grow the skill set internally. We're going to go out and work with, let's say, a Pivotal Labs here in Toronto, right? They do a lot of this stuff. Then the Pivotal Lab guys presumably need something like you say, in terms of data to work with. So they need, like you say, some API that somebody's vetted to say, okay, we understand what you're trying to accomplish with this mobile app. And is that what they'll do? They'll publish a set of APIs to say, here's how
an
how you can get
SDK
the data. Okay.
for external organizations to attach to it.
Okay.
And in fact, just any external collaboration. So you look at media as an example.
Yeah.
Let's say you're an organization that wanted to produce a commercial, but that's not what you do for a living. You create widgets, but you want to have a commercial for that widget, and you want to be in charge of the creative. So you're going to say, here's the storyboard, but you might have 8 different organizations that actually produce the content, the digital content. Well, you need them to talk to each other, but you want to save that IP as yours, to which they will access your environment versus that your IP being passed between 8 different people. And the potential of loss of that IP is high in that world.
Yeah, exactly. So let's try to put a product angle on this, Paul, because a lot of listeners to this podcast. Yeah, exactly. But do you see underneath that chief data officer? Do you see as you roll that out or cascade that through the organization that data owners having to kind of think like product managers? Like, help me cascade that idea. So
I think absolutely.
So presumably it's not just the CDO and then there's no team underneath. So talk to me about how you see that cascading and are there opportunities both internally for somebody to manage let's say a subset of that data as a product, and then as well maybe externally to say, listen, I'm going to look at behemoth company XYZ's APIs, and I'm going to build a derivative product, based on that offers value to both organizations. Like give me some thoughts on the product side. It
falls under the pragmatic marketing world, right? It is a product management function once you treat it like its own entity.
Right.
Once you abstract it from the applications that create it, now it is a living thing, not unlike the product was the living thing. It has features and functions. It has customers and customer segments. It has costs and prices associated with it, right? It has releases, not unlike product releases have. It needs to be treated as a thing that produces value for the organization. Maybe not in its raw form. Maybe is, maybe not, but probably not in its raw form. Maybe its evolution into insight or multiple insights also become their own subset of products. But I'd argue that is still a product management function, right? It's still a requirement to treat it like a revenue producing widget, even if it's an electronic widget. It is the difference between moving from a physical box of laundry detergent to a technology SaaS software asset to data, right? It's that next evolution is how do I treat data as different from a physical product to software as I am to data? It's another evolution of what a product manager needs to look at.
Yeah, interesting. So, where else to go on that one then? So
I think data mobility, leading into that next conversation, is in fact what the product manager needs to focus on. So by definition, a lot of people think data mobility is enabling data access via mobile phones. While that's partially true, it's certainly not the complete picture. Right. I always describe data mobility as 3 things: from, to, and for. So from, it's abstracting the data from the application that created it, elevating its value by abstracting it from its source, making that data now available to new people, new places, new things, new functions. And then finally, now that you have that data away from the original application, I can make it available for completely new business functions. Maybe it's to broker out to other entities. Maybe it's to create business insight and business analytics. Maybe it's for universal search. I want to look for Paul and M&A across all 400 applications versus having per application searches. Maybe it's for compliance because I have some privacy or some legislative requirements to bring that together. So that from, to, and for becomes the goal of the product manager to say, how do I ensure that my new asset is abstracted from in some sort of release with some sort of features? I can now have the APIs that make it accessible to people, places, and things, machine things. And for, completely different purpose than its original source. I may have created the client for this purpose, but I'm now going to use a collection of clients for a whole other purpose.
And I'm presuming that the perspective you're coming from there is you're seeing a lot of people, and I'm holding up my mobile phone here, associating mobile just with the mobile phone, because it happens to share the same word. Right. But you're not talking about mobility in the sense of a phone, although that could be a good source and a good from and a good too. Yeah. but you're saying it's more mobility in the sense of a broader movement. Yes.
Mobilize.
Data in motion. Yeah. So maybe rather than research in motion, these guys should have been data in motion, and then we'd still be in business. We were just making fun of my BlackBerry phone earlier for listeners who are wondering about the inside joke.
But it's fair to say that you could look at an organization in terms of the application value it produces, or the infrastructure value it produces, or the data value it produces. Right. And we rarely think of the data because we think of it as a side effect. It's there because I also happen to create an application, right? And sometimes we create the data after the application, which clearly not helpful.
Yeah. So one question that comes to my mind, or kind of thing to get your perspective on, this meme that's been around for many years now that software is eating the world. I'd like to hear your perspective on okay, if software is eating the world, what is it? Data is what feeding what's the corollary? Is data feeding the monster that is the software that's eating the world? What's the corollary there, or is there one?
I'd say innovation equals code plus data, right? It's code, being another source of the application. Yeah. While it does produce value for the thing it's producing value for, it has a relatively small life as compared to the data itself. Right? The data, even though you might have regulatory reasons to save it for a certain amount of time, it is and has useful value for much longer than that. Yeah. Right? It could live and outlive both the infrastructure and the applications that create.
Yeah.
So arguably, without the data, it's just screens. With the data, it becomes an innovative piece of value.
Yep.
But us as, and I certainly put up my hand as a product manager, right? And as leading product management team, I always focused on the application's evolution, and the data was what also happened to be in the project release, right? It's the thing that BA designed along with the screen, not in terms of the asset that I could use in the future. And I think the tide's turning to say, hold on a second, let's make sure the asset that I'm going to keep for 25 years is the first thing I design, and let the experience of the data I need to collect sort of be secondary.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense to me. And the analogy that came to mind when you were talking there was, my wife and I were just talking about her parents have these, her mother specifically, my wife's mother has these boxes and boxes of slides, and she keeps telling her daughter, my wife, that I'm gonna sit down and view all these, when I'm not able to do anything else, and this media problem comes up because my wife says, no, you won't, because you won't be able to find a slide projector. I think there's a similar thing here where what you're saying, I think what I hear you saying is the slide projector, the VHS machine, the DVD, the Blu-ray player, even maybe something like Netflix, on and on. Those have much shorter lifespans than the actual picture itself. And we want to make sure that we don't, to use that hackneyed expression, throw out the baby with the bathwater. In other words, we don't want to lose our great memories just because we can't find a working VHS player, right? So we have to realize that the value is in those images, not the fact that it's VHS or DVD or Blu-ray or whatever the latest and greatest is.
More interesting is the value might not in fact be in the picture itself, but in the data around the picture. Yeah. Well, it is important.
You can maybe regenerate the picture. Yeah, if you have enough data.
Exactly. Or you could describe the picture in such a way that it gives you the answer you're looking for, right? Yeah. What did we do in August? We were in Disney, right? Well, it's the metadata around that picture that was relevant, right? It was you and your wife at Disney at this ride at this date and da-da-da-da-da.
You had to slip Disney in there, didn't you?
Well, there's no.
Well done. That was very sweet.
There is no creation without Disney. I'm just saying that ultimately you want to search for and find that picture.
Yeah.
But in a sea of a million pictures, the metadata becomes more important, right? Because that's the searchability. I don't want to open up 1,000 pictures to find out which picture I'm looking for. I want to search for the picture that I know is, or it's much more likely to be true, and then open the picture, right? So in a gigabyte, not that bad. In an exabyte, much more difficult. Right? The metadata becomes the thing I want to search. In fact, becomes more valuable than the actual objects themselves.
Interesting. Good. So what have we covered here? So we talked about digital transformation a bit. We talked about data as a product. Our third topic was data mobility.
We touched on that.
Touched on that. Anything further that you think we missed on?
There might be value for tying those together, right? Like we talked about digital transformation and saying the reason why we do that is sort of the growth oriented, right? I'm looking to grow the organization, and those disruptors are having the CEO look at organizational effectiveness, looking at customer experience, looking at creating new revenue streams. Well, those, in fact, are business transformations that I need to implement. So the CIO, as participating in that, needs to look at what IT programs need to support that. So you'll tend to have a data-centric list of programs and an agility-centric list of programs. Data-centric says, how do I manage my data differently than I currently do now? And it's not about infrastructure applications, but about treating it differently, abstracting it, virtualizing it, having access control to it. I might look at data governance differently because now I want to put much more control on it because it has a life greater than the application. I want to look at data mobility to ensure that I can make it from, to, and for. And of course, data analytics, the actual activity of producing data. And then the agility-centric programs are much more about time to market. What's the difference between buying something, managing something, paying for something, right? How do I ensure that I have a different economic model? Maybe it's a cloud economic model. How do I bring something to market faster than sort of the waterfall approach I'm used to doing it now? So those new IT programs are sort of the new considerations of CIOs.
Interesting. And then to wrap it all up again for our product manager, piece. I hear a lot, for example, when I talk to recruiters or product management these days that, gone are the days where you can hire a product manager that just has, for example, domain expertise. So I've been in banking 20 years, or I've been in retail 20 years. You have to have strong engineering technical chops. I'm going to suggest, and you tell me if I'm wrong here, what you're saying is that's good, but make sure you've got some data chops as well, because as you manage those generations of your products, chances are the application, if you will, trends and technologies will come and go. But if you have a really solid understanding of the data and the business context of your data, then you can transition your product through kind of multiple application technology life cycles.
I'd even go further to say product manager is akin to data scientist, right? Data scientist is not just a subject matter expert in let's say the retail, but it also has to be an economist, also has to be a statistician, also needs to be a programmer, also has to understand the data itself, also has to be able to understand mathematical algorithms to support that, also needs to appreciate the value of the data itself. Well, product needs those skill sets too, right? It's not just managing the process of evolving a product, but it's appreciating how data is different than an application that's different than a widget.
Cool. So what? I think I asked you the same question last time, but it's good for our listeners. So if our listeners to this podcast want to dig a little deeper on any of these topics, like you mentioned earlier, that that programs at schools are starting to change. Other than obviously following your own work and your own blog, which we'll talk about at the end here, any other examples that you can share that you think are good ways to stay on top of these new kind of modes of thinking, if you will, in terms of, viewing data as a product? Is there the one, website online or YouTube channel, or
if only there was a single source of information?
Yes, exactly.
Now, I think, being well read on technology trends and business trends is helpful. In fact, more helpful than it used to be, right? It used to be, I was a master of financial services, and therefore I was a master of the product.
Right.
Now, if you don't understand digital transformation, if you don't understand social innovation, which is making the world better, if you don't understand how the CEO thinks and how his org chart's going to look because of that, you'll be less effective as a product manager, right? So, watch IDC and Gartner and Forrester and appreciate what Nexus of Forces is versus the IDC's third platform versus digital transformation. Those will have a much bigger impact in the evolution of the product in a midterm than sort of what the features and functionality of the next product release is going to be. Know that foundationally, the abstraction of data or the mobilization of data from the application probably needs to be a fundamental concern relatively short term in order to start creating those new insights, that new value for the company versus just another product.
Good stuff. Well, I'm just gonna check here and make sure. Yeah, we're running up on time. I thought we were. So good stuff. So if somebody's listening and they want to, follow you, reach out, connect with you, contact information you're comfortable sharing, what the best way to follow you is. I'm gonna try to reach back 7 months. I remember it had something to do with Paul Lewis HDS.
That's
maybe there was an @ sign before that.
That's right.
In the Twitter circumstance. So why don't you just recap those for us? The best ways to reach out and engage with you, and the best way to follow you.
Certainly, easy followers, Paul Lewis HDS at LinkedIn and at Paul Lewis at Twitter. Easy way to follow me. Okay. You can also, of course, contact me directly if you wish via Alan.
Okay. So do you know what happens if I go to Paul Lewis without the HDS? Do I find you, or do I find another?
I assume you'll find somebody else if you do it at Paul Lewis. But you can also do paullewishds.com, and that, in fact, will get directly to the blog.
Nice. That's awesome. Good. Well, entertaining and educational as always, Paul. So good chatting with you, and thanks again for being on Ready Product Radio.
Thank you very much,
and thanks for talking about product management. I appreciate that. Take care.
Today's podcast was brought to you by Eigenworks. Eigenworks specializes in win-loss analysis and customer development as a service. Get candid feedback to improve your sales approach, uncover competitive intelligence, and help you pivot as needed. Thank you for listening to this episode of Ready Product Radio, part of the Ready PDM network. This is when most podcasters ask you to leave a review on iTunes if you like the show. My only request is if you found the show entertaining, inspiring, or informative, please share it with a colleague or friend who may feel the same way. Also, note that the views expressed in this episode do not necessarily reflect my views or the views of the Ready PDM network. If you want yourself or your product to be ready, then keep your eyes on your markets, your ears to your customers, your mind on their experiences, both good and bad, and finally keep your hearts in your products. Until next time, thank you for listening. You can contact us on Twitter at Ready Product Radio. That's RDYPRODUCTRADIO. And on the web at www.readyproductradio.com.
Tuesday, what do you want to do tonight?
The same thing we do every night, Pinky. Try to take over the world.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.